After decades of space disinterest in the moon, the last few years have seen a boom in missions there. And now a number of countries seem suddenly again interested in grabbing a piece of that lunar pie in the sky. On Friday, Russia is due to launch its attempt to put a lander on the surface of the moon.
The Luna 25 mission is the first time Russia has tried to reach the moon since the Luna 24 went there and back again in 1976, when Russia was still part of the Soviet Union. This latest mission has been plagued by delays, but if all goes according to plan, the 800-kilogram lander could touch down on the lunar surface by the end of August. Russia's space agency Roscosmos says after arrival, the lander will analyze soil samples and conduct other research for a year. Its findings, though, will not be shared with ESA or NASA.
We have discontinued the cooperation with Roscosmos after the Russian invasion. But when we were still in the cooperation, the scientific objectives were to have a better understanding on the lunar regolith and on the lunar dust and plasma.
A range of missions sponsored by different nations and even companies have failed in recent attempts at soft landing on the moon. Although first safely accomplished in the mid-1960s, landing safely on the lunar surface, rather than crashing there, remains a challenging technical proposition. The Indian Space Agency knows only too well how difficult a soft landing can be. It launched a second mission to land on the moon in mid-July. Its first attempt to come down softly in 2019 failed. The Chandrayaan-3 lander has a longer flight plan, so could actually be touching down around the same time as Russia's Luna 25. Both missions are aimed at the moon's southern pole.
Well, the poles are scientifically the most interesting areas, not only to look for the history of the universe, but also we know that there is abundance of water in the craters, icy water, and water can be used to produce hydrogen and oxygen, and as we all know, that's the source of life.
As nations gear up for what many experts see as a new era in space exploration, the moon will play a central role, both for its resources and as a stepping stone for further endeavors. With the Luna 25 mission, Russia is also trying to get in on the ground floor.
Now, someone who knows a thing or two about Russia's space missions is Juri Rescheto. He's DW's Riga Bureau Chief, but used to report from Moscow until he, like many journalists, were ordered out after the hit of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Juri, turning to space, how important is this lunar mission for Russia?
Well, this lunar mission is very important for Russia. If we consider that Russia was a leading country in terms of space travel and space exploration, if we consider that Russia was also a leader in lunar exploration many, many years ago, and if we consider that Russia is currently politically associated only with the war in Ukraine, then we can understand why. So, for the last year and a half, Russia has been producing only negative headlines, at least in the Western world. And yeah, this is the first time that this huge country is being talked about in a different scientific context. After all, space is the only place in our universe where politics plays almost no role. Almost.
Almost, but that almost does a lot of heavy lifting there. And on that note, you know, Russia is also known for a good deal of mis- and disinformation. Will we know, and when will we know if this mission is even successful?
Well, the duration of the flight is going to be about 4.5 days, and after that the station is planned to enter orbit around the moon and land near the South Pole. The researchers should last a year. The main tasks of the mission is supposed to be exploration of resources on the moon, including water, and the success of the mission, that's for sure, is very important for Russian science, because since the war in Ukraine began, the Russians have had no or almost no international cooperation anymore. The European Space Agency and NASA have put all contracts on hold in protest against the war and end all joint scientific research in space. Yet, Russia remains dependent on Western technologies, and the only place where cooperation is still going on is the International Space Station, ISS. That's why Russians want to show that they can continue their space program despite the war, even if in a limited way.
Now, that's at a political level. You've spent a lot of time in Russia. You have interacted and spoken to a lot of Russians over the years. What do you think is the Russian space program's kind of impact on ordinary Russians?
Well, look, every nation has something very special that is proud of. In the Soviet Union, where I was born and where there was a lack of everything, we said there are two things where we are on the forefront, in ballet and in space. That was, of course, after the first man in space was a Russian, Yuri Gagarin. But those days are long gone. The only thing that Russians were proud of in the last decades was the Americans and the Europeans, that they flew to the ISS with the Russian Soyuz rocket. I myself attended a launch of that Russian rocket with the US, American and German and the Russian astronauts in the Russian Cosmodrome Baikonur. It was a big celebration. People toasted with champagne. But that too is over. The Western astronauts no longer fly with the Russian Soyuz rocket, but with SpaceX from Elon Musk. So it seems that there is nothing left for the Russians to be proud of today, especially when we consider that the list of participants in the, let's say, lunar race expands rapidly, along with state companies, NASA, Roscosmos and the European Space Agency. Private companies fly to the moon over the past 2 decades too, from Japan, China, India and Israel.
A lot to unpack there. DW's Riga Bureau Chief Juri Rescheto there to help us unpack it all. Thanks very much and keep looking up.